Hello and welcome to Revising Othello for Section B. This is less than a lesson and more guidance, I suppose, on how to do your own preparation because different people revise in different ways. And basically, this is going to have to be a decision on your part as to how you revise best and how you memorize a whole play really, really well. So we've already done Section A. Section A is where you get an extract and it's really tightly focused on the structure of tragedy. So where does this occur? Why is it a turning point? And you did all that just before half term. So today is about section B, which is about like the whole play, and you don't get an extract. So it's really down to you knowing this play inside out. So let's have a look at my advice for preparing to revise. What is the examiner looking for in section B? So because you don't have fiddly bits of quotes and a lovely detailed extract to pick from, they're really looking about how you construct and maintain an argument, a really well put together essay. Okay, you're going to have to spend some time planning this in the exam. So they're looking for your ability to debate. Your question will always have a quote that you either agree or disagree with. We've done this to death in every single literature lesson, whether it's with me or Mr. Bland, but also whenever we look at critical debates and when we read essays and when people present ideas in class, you're always saying how far you agree with those ideas. This is what you're doing in your coursework currently. So that's all they want to know. They want to know, you read Othello, was this true when you read it? Did you see that playing out, or do you think something else is going on? You know the answer to that. So please make sure that you've got a really clear opinion on that debate. They're also looking for you to offer quality evidence. Okay, that is so important in section B because you don't get that extract. It means that you need to revise those quotes. It means that you need to know where things occur in the play. It means that you need to, I suppose, find patterns and links across the play rather than just individual quotes. So it might be patterns of images and motifs. We've talked about meta theatre. We've talked about light versus dark or black versus white. What else have we talked about? We've talked about nature, images of disease and corruption. You've got all those kind of patterns at your fingertips ready to go. Okay, that's quality evidence. So rather than just like, oh, this is one quote, I remember that, and just kind of whack in there and hope that it kind of works for me. This is about you assembling things across the whole of the play to show that you've read that play and know it inside out, but also that it fits really well with your argument. So point three then is basically a culmination of those two, maintaining a strong and convincing argument. So if you're giving me quality evidence, then it'll be convincing. And if you're maintaining a strong argument, then you'll show me what you think of that debate. Okay, so even though you might be saying it might be this and it might be that, you need to come down to kind of one conclusion by the end. So you've seen this slide before. This is an example of a section B question and how it's getting you to engage with those different assessment objectives. So this one says, Iago's villainy is fiendish and inexplicable. To what extent do you agree with this view? Remember to include in your answer relevant comment on Shakespeare's dramatic methods. So, Iago's villainy is setting you up to talk about tragedy. This is a paper on tragedy. You spent your whole year talking about tragedy. So if you get to the end of your Othello essay and you haven't mentioned it, there's been a big oversight. Okay, the question is asking you to think about: is this a traditional tragic victim, villain, hero? Okay, what do you know about tragedy? How far does that fit with your knowledge? So that's your AO4, your literary context. But it's also asking you about wider context, AO3 context, in terms of stuff like morals. What was going on at the time? Why would people see Iago as a villain? The kind of religious imagery around that, and the word devil might be important there, which also links you to this word fiendish. So fiendish and inexplicable are the two adjectives that you would have to debate, okay? This is the most important point in this video, guys. You absolutely must engage with all words in the question. You can't just pick the one that you're definitely sure about and be like, yeah, that's really interesting. I'll just talk about that word and ignore that one on the end because I'm not really sure what to say about that. You must pull that question apart, okay? This is why planning is so important. You really need to explode the quote in the question and think carefully about all the words in it. So Iago's villainy is fiendish, evil, and inexplicable. You can't really explain it. So probably that quote from Coleridge about motivus malignity would be in there. But these are the things that you're going to debate for AO5. They're also going to construct your argument for AO1. I would also kind of, you might even want to think about the word villainy and how far you could debate that. I mean, Iago, he's pretty kind of clean cut in terms of being an out and out villain, isn't he? But if it was a question on Othello and saying Othello was a hero, you might want to debate how far he was a hero. So the next part of the question will always ask you, to what extent do you agree? And that is you coming down AO5 and AO1, strong argument. This is me. I've read Othello and I've got opinions and ideas about this text. And then it always bolts on this extra sentence just to remind you, this is a literature exam. Please make sure that you're talking about techniques, okay? So AO2, dramatic methods, are things like structure. This is a tragic structure. Where does it come in the play? Which key moments are you picking, and where do they come in this plot of a hero's downfall from grace? You might also want to think about the language in your quote. So if you've bothered and used all that brain power to remember a good quote, really zoom in on it and pull it apart. You should be saying at least two things about each quote. You might be talking about semantic fields and patterns of images across the play. You might be talking about things like entrances and exits. You might be talking about setting. You've got really brilliant ideas on big things like setting and structure. So make sure you get them in, okay? So it's about using small, tiny, really interesting details, even about like punctuation and sentence types, but it's also about like the big overarching patterns. So you've also seen these before, the kind of questions that you might be asked. Some of them are from the specimen paper, the kind of sample stuff that we get from AQA, and some of them are from real exams. So what I want to kind of recommend from this point on is that you make your own way in preparing to answer questions like this, okay? So I think that the best kind of preparation for this exam is to plan answers for questions, okay? And it's because this exam, yes, it is quizzing you on, did you read Othello? Do you know it really well? Yes, that's absolutely what the exam is on. But actually, English literature is about, can you write a really good essay? So the best way to plan and prepare for an exam, which is about essay writing, is to do a lot of essay planning, isn't it? So key way to revise would be to plan answers for these questions. So I am going to kind of set these quite prescriptively as we go, as we revise this half term. So for example, I will be asking you at the end of the week whether you want to do question 3 or 4 in that first left-hand quadrant, top left. You will pick one, you'll pick that apart, and you will send me your essay plan. So this is a key way to prepare, and you might just want to do all of your revision that way. Another good revision strategy, kind of question-wise, would be for you to make your own question up. So it might be just a really good idea you've had, it might be something that you've read in a study guide, or it might be from some criticism that we've read. So it might be a quote from Arthur Miller, it might be a quote from those 2 articles that you read in pairs and kind of swapped your ideas on. It might be something from a video that you've watched since school has been closed. It might just be something that you have read on JSTOR now that JSTOR is open to you. So you might just have a really good quote about Othello that you could debate. Okay, so either way, it's about having ideas about the whole play, but really having a lot of evidence at your fingertips to have a really convincing argument about that quote. So, as I've said, because you don't have an extract, it's really, really important that you know this play inside out and you can pick the best evidence. It's not about, oh, I'm just going to learn, 10 quotes and hope that I can use them in some way. No, you absolutely will come a cropper with that. You need to know this play and pick the best bits, even if it's not the stuff that you hope that you would end up writing about. So my top tips then for knowing this play really well, there's no easy way to do that. They are going to be hard won, but really worthwhile tasks. So you might want to reread the play or certain sections of it. You might want to rewatch it. We've got logins to digital theatre. It's really easy to just set aside, 2 hours maybe, and just watch Othello, and that will really help you with the structure of it, the characters that you want to kind of, I suppose, think about in terms of their entrances, exits, their files, how they're being set up against other characters, but key quotes as well should hopefully become a little bit more memorable the more you hear them. Go back through the wonderful notes that you've made in class. They are beautiful, they are so high level, they are great, and far superior to most of the stuff that you're going to find on the internet. So really start with your classwork. Then go to revision or study guide. So you might have a textbook that helps you with Othello. You might have a York Notes, for example. You can order these things from various bookshops online that may or may not pay tax. So please do, if you're struggling with Othello, invest in a £7 textbook that might help you with it. If you are not that way inclined, Spark Notes and Cliff Notes online are beautiful. If there are sections in particular of Othello that you think, God, I haven't actually got a clue what that means in modern day English, then Spark Notes, No Fear Shakespeare will translate it for you into modern English, so use that. While you're doing all of those things, though, this bit in bold at the bottom is really, really important. You need to constantly consider Shakespeare's decisions as a playwright. What language is he using? What structure? What's he saying about this character? Where's he set it? What timing is he using? Think about night versus day. And then the genre of tragedy. So everything that you're kind of making notes on as you go, and you must make notes, is thinking about the lens of tragedy, because that's what your whole paper is on. But also, Shakespeare is a writer who has deliberately manipulated us like a little puppeteer, and he's decided where things start and finish. He's decided what people say. He's decided when they say it, how much they talk, how much they're not allowed to talk. Everything that he's decided has a meaning behind it. So keep Shakespeare and tragedy completely in your vision as you revise. So generally speaking, these are the things that I would hope you would know about quite well. Okay, so the characters that I think you should know really in depth that you might easily get asked about are Othello, Iago, Desdemona, Rodrigo, and Cassio. I would be surprised if you got a whole question on Brabantio, but that's not to say that you won't. He is only in Act 1 and he beats a hasty retreat, but you might get asked about him. Ways around that would be, I suppose, to talk about how he belongs to the Senate and how he's representative of, justice and reason, and perhaps kind of maybe even like more traditional ways or stereotypical ways of thinking, and therefore you could kind of draw on other characters in that. The themes that I think you should know about that we saw right at the beginning of this course are, of course, jealousy, because that is what this play is apparently about. This is Othello's, tragic flaw as our hero. But another big theme that we've spent a lot of time talking about is the idea of service. What I've tried to do with these themes is show you the kind of inverse of that. So service is where you're doing whatever somebody says, but also think about maybe if you've got a question on leadership, what kind of leader is Othello, or what kind of leadership do we see from Venice? How does it compare with Cassio's approach, that kind of thing. Love and war, so you might get them separately or you might get them together as a contrast. Justice and villainy again, so you might just have justice, you might want to talk about uses of setting and different characters that represent justice and different kinds of justice, and who thinks that they are, kind of in a position to carry that out, versus villainy, where you could set up that dynamic if it wasn't in the question. Public versus private is something that we've talked about all the time, so our captain's captain and all that jazz. Deception and prejudice, and then appearance versus reality. So just this idea that basically people aren't seeing things as they really are. That's a really common thing in Othello, isn't it? If you think about the handkerchief, you think about ocular proof, people seeing things that just aren't there. And then finally, the idea of isolation. So again, setting really important, but isolation in terms of being an outsider, in terms of maybe gender as well. So not just racial stereotypes, but gender stereotypes that kind of push people to the edges and marginalize them. So these are things that I hope you'll be able to write about if they came up, because they're things that we've spent a lot of time on in class. If you're looking at any of those and thinking, God, I hope I don't get a question on that, that's what you need to start your revision with, okay? So if you are thinking about those characters and themes and thinking, I don't really know much about that, I need to do some work there, these are the two things that I recommend that you do. Firstly, come up with an argument about Shakespeare's message. So he was using this character to say, or the role of this character in this tragedy is to. Okay, really think about Shakespeare, put Shakespeare at the beginning of everything you write about that theme or that character. Then pick 3 key moments in the play that would help you debate that argument you've come up with. So if you've said Desdemona is, the epitome of a tragic victim who is loyal and devoted and comes a cropper from the tragic hero, pick the 3 parts of the play that prove that, or maybe a part that doesn't, so you can get a bit of debate in there. Consider where those scenes or those parts happen in the tragic structure. Is it at the beginning with the exposition? Is it at the climax, at the turning point? Is it right at the end where we're meant to learn something? Also think about what methods Shakespeare's using, language-wise, structure-wise, all that kind of thing, and learn 3 to 5 key quotes to help you evidence whatever argument you would make. So the final 2 slides here then are just to show you what that might look like. So if I was to revise Othello as a character, here's my message that I think Shakespeare was probably trying to say with Othello, that you want to demonstrate the public and private are really linked, and that wider social prejudice can be internalized by victims and by villains. And these are the 3 things that I would write about. I haven't got time to go into them now, but you are more than welcome to read these at your own leisure. So 3 key moments with lots of quotes, but I'm really thinking about what's he trying to say, how does this fit with tragedy, what methods is he using. Same with themes. So I've done jealousy because it's the most obvious one. Here, I think that Othello is meant to show us that this is a world of hierarchy and service, and then, of course, we're going to get jealousy in our public and private lives because people worry about being displaced. And these are the three things that I would talk about. Again, remember that I'm debating, so I'm saying yes, there's professional jealousy, yes, there's private jealousy, but actually the women don't seem to do it. So, do what you think you